A man spent the night inside a metallic dome in the Siberian wilderness. Within a month, every single hair on his head had fallen out. His friend developed sores on his face that never healed for the rest of his life. And that, according to the people who have been there, is not even close to the strangest part of that night. Western Yakutia, Siberia. Over 100,000 square kilometers of uninhabited wilderness. No trails, no roads, dense forests, sprawling swamps, and permafrost that goes down further than anyone has ever drilled. For hundreds of years, the nomadic people who occasionally passed through this region told stories about strange structures half buried in the frozen ground. Dome-shaped, metallic, warm inside even in the depths of a Siberian winter, and deeply, consistently dangerous to anyone who stayed near them too long. The outside world barely knows these structures exist. The locals have known about them for centuries, and most of them won't go anywhere near them. Today we're going to look at what people have actually reported, the eyewitness accounts, the descriptions, the one expedition that got close enough to find something, and paid for it. Before we go further, a genuine thank you to everyone who keeps coming back to this channel. It means more than I can say. I want to be upfront about something. Everything I share here is the best of what I've been able to find and piece together. If something I say sits differently with what you know or contradicts information you've come across, please don't take it personally, and neither will I. Think of me as someone who reads a lot but certainly hasn't read everything. None of what I present here is the final word. Evidence changes, interpretations shift, and I'd rather be honestly uncertain than confidently wrong. With that said, let's get into Siberia. The local Evenk and Yakutian people have two names for these structures. They call them heldyu, which translates roughly as iron houses, or olgui, meaning upturned cauldrons. Both names tell you something about what these things look like from the outside. They are hemispherical, smooth, reddish in color, like copper, though nobody who has examined them up close believes they are actually copper. They protrude from the permanently frozen ground, partially submerged, with a visible opening at the top. Their diameter ranges from 6 to 9 meters, roughly the size of a large living room. The metal is described consistently across multiple independent accounts as extraordinarily hard. People have tried to cut fragments off with sharpened cold chisels. Nothing. They've tried hammers. No dents. The surface is covered in a layer of material that resembles coarse sandpaper, but it cannot be chipped, scratched, or peeled away by any tool anyone has brought to the site. No one has ever successfully removed even a small fragment for analysis. And here is the detail that has puzzled researchers most. Over time, the local people have watched some of these domes slowly sink further into the frozen ground and disappear completely. What they leave behind is a large circular patch where the vegetation grows abnormally, taller, denser, and more lush than everything around it, as if something below the surface is still feeding it. The exterior is strange enough, but the interior descriptions are what make these structures genuinely hard to file away as a simple geological oddity. According to accounts passed down through generations of Yakutian people and corroborated by the handful of outsiders who have reportedly entered them, the domes have an opening at the top that leads down a spiral staircase into a circular corridor. Off that corridor are multiple rooms, also metallic. The walls, floors, and ceilings are all the same unknown metal. Outside temperatures in this part of Siberia regularly hit minus 40 degrees Celsius in winter. Inside these structures, people have consistently described the temperature as warm, comfortable, as if something is generating heat from within. In 1971, an elderly Evenki hunter reported finding what he called an iron burrow in the ground. Inside it, he said, he saw the bodies of several beings, thin, dark-skinned, with a single eye, dressed in what he described as iron costumes. He was willing to take anyone back to show them. Nobody took him up on it. He died before anyone did. Whether you believe that account or not is entirely up to you, but the man never changed the story. The region has a name, Uyu the Valley of Death. The Yakutuan elders declared it off-limits long ago. Their reasoning was consistent and specific, not vague superstition, but observed cause and effect. Spend too long near one of the domes and you get sick, your head spins, you lose your balance, you develop sores that won't heal. And in some cases, the illness was passed on to children who had never been anywhere near the structures themselves. Mikhail Koretsky from Vladivostok visited the Valley of Death 3 times, in 1933, 1937, and 1947. Over those 3 trips, he personally saw 7 of the domes. He described them as between 6 and 9 meters across, made of a material that looked like copper but was far harder than any copper he had ever encountered. A sharpened cold chisel left no mark. A hammer left no dent. On his 3rd visit, Koretsky and his companions spent a night inside one of the domes. Nothing dramatic happened that night, but within a month, one of his companions had lost all his hair. Koretsky himself developed 2 small pustules on his cheek. They never healed for the rest of his life. He wasn't the only one. The pattern across multiple independent accounts, spanning more than a century of reports, is strikingly consistent. Physical proximity to these structures causes measurable biological harm. The elders who banned the area weren't working from legend, they were working from observation. What makes the Valley of Death harder to dismiss is that the documentation doesn't start in the 20th century, it goes back much further. In 1853, the explorer R. Mach wrote about his travels in the Vilyui River basin. The local people in a settlement called Suntar told him about a gigantic copper cauldron in the upper reaches of the river. Only its rim was visible above the ground. Several trees had grown up inside it. He recorded this as a matter of fact, without embellishment. Around the same time, researcher N.D. Arkhipov documented the oral traditions of the same region and noted something that most people would walk straight past. Multiple rivers and streams in the area carry the same name, Olgidak, which translates as cauldron stream. These are not recent names. They are ancient geographical names that have been in use for so long that the memory of why they were given those names has faded. But the names themselves remain, embedded in the landscape. When the name of a river tells you there is a cauldron nearby and then you go looking and find one, that is not a coincidence. That is a place where people have been observing the same structures for so long that the observation became geography. In 1936, a geologist working near the Olgidak River came across a dome that had not yet fully submerged. He described a smooth metallic hemisphere, roughly 2 centimeters thick, reddish in color with razor-sharp edges. Less than a fifth of it was still above the ground. He sent a detailed description to the regional capital of Yakutsk. No one responded. No follow-up was made. In 2006, Czech explorer Ivan Mackerly decided to go and look for himself. The terrain made ground exploration almost impossible. The taiga is so dense you cannot see more than 10 steps ahead. His team's solution was a motor-powered paraglider for aerial surveys. One of their pilots, Pavel, went up and came back pointing at his camera. In the middle of a monotonous, unbroken forest, he had recorded a perfect circle. They located the coordinates, hiked in, and found a circular pond roughly 50 meters in diameter. At its center was a ring of land about 30 meters across. In the middle of that ring was an opening flooded with water. Pavel waded in with fishing waders and a long pole, testing the ground beneath him. Under the snow and a thin layer of mud, the pole hit something solid and continuous. Not ice, the shape was wrong for ice, and the current would have melted it anyway. The pole disappeared nearly 3 meters down into the opening at the center. They found a second site, 2 kilometers downriver, a circular pond 10 meters across with a smooth, solid curved dome beneath it, covered in mud, probed but impossible to excavate with equipment they hadn't brought. That night, Mackerly's condition collapsed without warning. Severe dizziness, fainting, total loss of balance. He couldn't stand, couldn't see straight, couldn't eat or drink. The crisis lasted a full day. The rest of the team was unaffected. Sound familiar? The team loaded onto their raft and drifted downriver through the night, putting as much distance between themselves and the Valley of Death as they could. To this day, no expedition has successfully recovered a fragment of any of these structures. No sample has ever been analyzed in a laboratory. The domes that are still above ground are sinking slowly, year by year, into the frozen earth. Here's what the evidence actually gives us. Consistent physical descriptions of the same structures across multiple independent witnesses spanning at least 170 years. Ancient geographical place names that reference the same objects. A pattern of specific biological harm in anyone who stays near them too long, matching across accounts from different eras and different people. An expedition in 2006 that found circular anomalies in exactly the right location and confirmed something solid beneath the surface. Natural geological formations do not generate interior warmth in -40-degree conditions. They do not cause hair loss in people who sleep inside them. They do not have spiral staircases and circular corridors, and they do not leave perfectly circular vegetation patterns when they sink into the ground. Whatever these structures are, they were built by someone for some purpose, and they are still down there. Whether they are ancient technology, remnants of something we have no framework to understand yet, or something else entirely, I genuinely don't know. And anyone who tells you they do know with certainty is working from something other than evidence. What do you think is under the ground in Yakutia? Leave it in the comments. I read every one. If this gave you something to think about, share it, and come back for part 2, where the ancient legends of the Yakutian people turn out to describe these events in ways that are far too specific to be just stories.